Hi, I'm Dr. Mac Adkins, founder and Chief Academic Officer for SmarterServices. Thank you for checking out this blog titled, Don't Allow Your Students to Fail Before You Identify Them as at Risk. There is an organization in the San Francisco Bay Area that is relentlessly pursuing the goal of fighting poverty. The organization is called the Tipping Point Community. It takes a comprehensive approach to poverty alleviation by investing in 4 areas: education, employment, housing, and health. Their CEO was quoted in an interview with Rocket Ship Public Schools as saying, "Of these 4 investment areas, we know that providing high-quality education is one of the best ways to break the cycle of poverty for good. When an individual graduates from college, he or she doubles their lifetime earnings and paves the way for future generations of their families to pursue the path to and through college." Many other change agents, including Bill Gates, concur that higher education is the best way to permanently break the cycle of poverty. However, there are many persons who catch this vision for improving their lives through higher education. They enroll, but then soon afterwards drop out. Frequently, these persons have taken out a student loan, and then they have no greater capacity to repay it, and they actually find themselves in worse financial condition than before they enrolled. As educators, we have the responsibility to identify these persons who are at risk of dropping out and do everything we can to support these learners to prevent them from dropping out. But educators are facing a very difficult paradox. In order to know which students are at risk, we first have to allow them to fail in some way. Behavioral data is typically the first early indicator that a student is on a path to dropping out. Learners who do not attend or log into courses within the first 3 days of a term are at much higher risk of dropping out. Learners who minimally engage, such as responding to an introductory discussion board question with a very short response, are also at a higher risk of dropping out. Certainly, students who score poorly on early assignments are getting off to a bad start from which they may not recover. One type of behavioral data that schools may also use is engagement metrics from their learning management systems, such as frequency or duration of login. One of the institutions we at SmarterServices serve is Georgia State University in Atlanta. Their Vice President for Student Success, Tim Rennick, was recently interviewed by the MarketWatch publication about their award-winning student success program. He listed the following 8 warning signs that a college student is headed toward dropping out: not accepting help, taking too few credits, choosing unnecessary courses, struggling in their major, being placed in remedial classes, running out of money, skipping class, and dealing with adversity. All 8 of these factors are a form of behavioral data. In an effort to identify these at-risk students before they are allowed to fail, some schools have turned to demographic data in addition to behavioral data. It is true that demographic factors such as whether or not a person is the first student in their family to go to college, their socioeconomic status, and ethnicity can be very predictive. But when used as a retention predictor, these factors are not always accurate, and more importantly, they are not malleable or changeable. There is nothing a school can do to help a student regarding these demographic factors. Wouldn't it be great if there was a way to identify at-risk students even before the term begins, using factors for which remediation can be provided? And wouldn't it be great if there was a category of data, in addition to behavioral and demographic data, that could be collected very early in the student experience that was really predictive of learner success and retention. Earlier in this presentation, I mentioned that Bill Gates recognized the problem of college student dropouts being a significant problem in our country. To determine why college students drop out, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation surveyed thousands of persons who had started college but did not finish. The top 5 reasons they found were conflicts with work schedule, affordability of tuition, lack of support from family, lack of belief that a college degree is valuable, and lack of discipline. These reasons are all a part of a third category of data. We call it non-cognitive data. You may think of non-cognitive data using a term such as grit. We call it non-cognitive data because it is independent of one's intelligence. Most persons do not drop out of college because they're not smart enough. Non-cognitive data is also independent of demographic or behavioral data. It consists of one's traits, attributes, skills, situation, and habits that form their learning persona. Well, did you know that there is an assessment that measures these constructs? Did you even think it was possible to quantify grit? Well, there is, and since 2002, the assessment has been taken by almost 6 million students from over 1,000 institutions. The assessment is known as the SmarterMeasure Learning Readiness Indicator. The assessment begins by looking at the learner internally. We call this section individual attributes. It measures things like motivation, procrastination, willingness to ask for help, and locus of control. While looking at the learner internally, we also identify their dominant learning style, which is based on the multiple intelligences model. This determines whether they are visual, verbal, social, solitary, etc. Then, we look at the learner externally. We call this section life factors. It looks at their availability of time, support from family, having an appropriate place to study, health, and finances. Next, we look at the learner's skill set. We look at their technology skills, their on-screen reading skills, and their keyboarding skills. We have found that the non-cognitive data measured by the assessment works very well with demographic and behavioral data that schools are already collecting. In fact, the non-cognitive data is typically the why that explains the what that is being observed with behavioral data. For example, if a student has not logged in during the first week of the course, there must be a reason. The reason is typically a non-cognitive factor on which the student scored low in SmarterMeasure. Colleges position the assessment at different points in the student's experience. Many institutions position it as part of the admissions process. This is not to use the assessment as a gatekeeper, but rather to identify the students who are at risk even before they take their first class. This enables the institution to provide the resources needed to hopefully retain the student, thereby improving the life of the student and their family for years to come. So, you do not have to allow your students to fail before you identify them as at risk. If you'd like to learn more about the assessment, including a free login to take it for yourself, then just send me an email at mac@smarterservices.com. Thanks.